During the top conference in Maastricht in 1991, you was already there, but then in another position, of course.
It was on the 8th and 9th of December. It was my birthday, the 9th of December, and so I was congratulated by the then Prime Minister Ruud Lubbers and by my good old friend Wim Kok. I was there, and in fact, I signed the treaty in February 1992, and I'm the only one in Europe, being still active, who has signed the treaty. When joking, I'm always saying the Euro and myself, we are the only survivors of the Maastricht Treaty. But I didn't play a prominent role during the Maastricht Summit because the finance minister agreed on the economic monetary union the day before. We were sitting together, the finance ministers, the day before, and as we agreed on everything, including the details, this was not even mentioned during the Maastricht Summit because Ruud Lubbers was telling his colleagues in the presence of the finance minister that we have an agreement on the level of finance minister, so we don't have to come back to the issue of the economic and monetary union. During that period, the finance ministers were excellent when it came to delivering results.
Yeah. And the end result, was it even a surprise for you, or it was very clear from the beginning?
No. I was not playing a massive role during this Maastricht Summit because an agreement we had amongst the finance ministers. I played a major role during the first semester of 1991 because Luxembourg was in the presidency and I was leading the conference on the economic and monetary union during 6 months, and so I was inventing, I have to say it because it's the truth, the opting out for Britain together with Jacques Delors. And all this was endorsed by all the governments, and so the finance minister didn't play a role in Maastricht. That's the truth, because they played a role before.
Yeah. But one can say that you are one of the architects of the treaty, in fact.
Yeah, as far as the economic and monetary side of the treaty is concerned, the political, we had 2 conferences during the Luxembourgish and the Dutch presidency, the one dedicated to economic and monetary union, and the other one to the so-called political union. The result of the economic and monetary union was nearly perfect. We'll come back to that issue, I suppose. And the political union was not really starting during that period. The Luxembourgish foreign minister, Mr. Poos, at that time, was leading the conference on the political union. I was in charge on the request of the then Prime Minister Jacques Santer to deal with the monetary issues, and that's what we did.
And if you look now, 25 years later, and let's say you look as an architect, how was the building standing?
During the first semester of 1991, and also during the presidency of Wim Kok during the second semester of 1991, and he did it in an excellent way, I was of the opinion that we were doing the right thing, but we were not doing a complete job, because I was of the opinion during that time, as of today, that the dimension of the so-called coordination of economic policies was not dealt with in a proper way. Delors, Bergovois, the then French finance minister and the later prime minister, Philippe Mesdat, the Belgian minister, we were of the opinion that the economic government of Europe should be written in treaty terms in the Maastricht Treaty. Others did refuse that, the Germans, the Dutch, because they didn't like this idea of having a stronger coordination of economic policies. That's the weakness of the Maastricht Treaty, and we are suffering until today from the consequences of that failure.
Yeah, but can you also say that afterwards, out of Brussels, that they were not principled enough to take care, let's say, in budget ways and so on and so on?
We had difficult debates with the Germans, with the Brits, with the French, because the French didn't like the idea that the European Central Bank should be independent. The Germans were very much, and rightly so, insisting on the need the European Central Bank would have to be very much independent when it comes to political influence taking. So I had, during the first semester, to bridge the views between France and Germany, which was not, I have to say, an easy job. Jean-Claude Juncker, the later president of the European Central Bank, was in charge of the negotiation on the high officials level, and he didn't like the idea of the independence of the central bank. When he became a president of the central bank, he liked the idea very much. And I had from time to time to recall him that this was not his initial views, but he was in charge of the governmental view of Mitterrand and so. But as I said, these things didn't play a role in Maastricht, because the leaders were very happy that the finance ministers agreed on the basic elements of the economic and monetary union. But I do still regret, I do still regret that we did not intensify the efforts to have a real coordination of economic, budgetary and fiscal policies. When revisiting the so-called Werner Plan, one of my predecessors as a Luxembourg Prime Minister, he was in 1973 advocating tax harmonization, which is a real issue which was a real issue in Luxembourg. He was pleading in favor of a stronger coordination of economic policies, and the fact is that if you have the same currency, you have to be committed to the same fate, and the same fate means that you have to coordinate, if not to harmonize, different dimensions of your national political behavior. We didn't do that at that time, and we are still suffering from that weakness.
Yeah. In a way, you can say the Maastricht Treaty, and so the name Maastricht is symbolic in a way for Europe. But how do you feel the meaning of Maastricht nowadays?
For me, that's I like the city. I like Limburg as a province. I like the people there. I'm very often there. And the Limburgse dialect is very close to Luxembourg, which is a language. And when I have public meetings in Limburg, I'm speaking German or Luxembourgish, and the public is asking questions in Limburg, and I do understand it. So I have a close relationship to Limburg as a province and to Maastricht as a city. And I'm always very happy if I have the opportunity to go back to Maastricht, because it was, in fact, after the Treaty of Rome, the most important treaty in the history of the European Union. People do forget about the details of this treaty. It was the first treaty having written down with the agreement of everyone, and later on with the ratification of all the parliaments. We were 12 during that period, not 28 like now, as now. It was the first treaty which explained the principle of subsidiarity. And we are still trying, my commission is still trying, to apply the principle of subsidiarity, that Europe should be big on big things and modest, timid, reluctant on smaller things. We are not very successful in that regard. But the now Commission is applying the principle of subsidiarity with more strength than it was ever done before. The commissions before the now Commission launched 130 new initiatives per year. We are launching 23 new initiatives. We were revisiting 400 pieces of legislation in order to check if yes or no this would still be needed. So we did become more modest. And why am I saying this? Because I was there when in Maastricht the principle of subsidiarity was broadly discussed, and I remember the details of the discussion because I was in the room.
You say, well, the treaty was not perfect. It was important, but not perfect. And still, we can see that today. Is there a possibility? Do you see a possibility to make it perfect, or are we too late?
I have one personal impression. This impression is that if we have perfect treaties, and if everyone is happy with this perfect treaty, if the willingness of those who are supposed to apply the treaty is not perfect, this perfect treaty will stay as an imperfect treaty. And if you have imperfect treaty, like the Maastricht Treaty is in some regards imperfect, if the willingness, the political will of the leaders is perfect, then you can easily make this treaty becoming perfect. We did not draw all the conclusions and all the consequences out of the Maastricht Treaty till today, because there is more political union in this treaty than we have a political union on the ground now. And so I'm really considering that this was an historic step the European Union has taken in Maastricht. And sometimes I'm a little bit afraid, worried, concerned by the fact that the Dutch citizens are no longer proud of this treaty. They were in 91, 92, but today the Dutch sometimes are stepping away from the basic philosophy of the Maastricht Treaty. But I'm sticking still to the philosophy of the Maastricht Treaty, because after the Treaty of Rome, this was the most perfect, although being imperfect, treaty the European Union has known.
And maybe it's strange, but you see nowadays that young people are more enthusiastic about Europe than, let's say, older people, and there is sometimes a populistic feeling, an anti-European feeling.
This anti-European feeling is not due to the Maastricht Treaty, but to some extent it's due to a bad explanation of what the Maastricht Treaty really means. I have the impression that those who have signed the treaty, I'm not speaking about persons but about countries, that some of them didn't know what it means to have a single currency. Because if countries are behaving like if they had their own national currency, without taking into account the problems of their immediate neighbors, and this is what is missing in this Maastricht Treaty. And I'm coming back to the coordination of economic policies. But the fact is that the Maastricht Treaty, I should say the Maastricht Treaty, is one of the biggest achievements of the European Union, thanks to the Luxembourgish presidency during the first semester 91 and the Dutch presidency during the second semester 91. Yeah. Although the then Dutch government tried to change the proposals of the outgoing Luxembourgish presidency, but this is a different story.
Yeah.
Black Monday.
Yeah, Black Monday. They had the idea that they could also arrange a complete political union, and that was not the case.
No, that was not possible during that period. But today, is there a Dutch government who would try to do the same thing? I don't think so.
No. After the Brexit and so on, are you concerned that even more countries come with an idea like that? Or?
Not really, but you cannot exclude others to be as less responsible as the British voters were. They had their reasons to vote against the membership of the European Union. I do think that if we are leading the negotiations with Britain in a wrong way, with wrong results, the final result could easily be that others would like to leave the European Union, but the negotiations will be led in a way that this will not happen.
Can you imagine a Europe without a euro?
I could imagine it, but I wouldn't like the idea, because I was finance minister and prime minister during the period before we had the single currency, and I will always remember the difficulties we had in the framework of the the monetary system of Europe, to align and realign the parities between the different European currencies. Let's suppose for 1 second that we wouldn't have had the euro during the Iraq War, where Europe was split in 2 camps. Let's imagine we wouldn't have had the euro after the 9/11 2001. Let's imagine that we wouldn't have had the euro during the financial and economic crisis which was imported from the US to Europe. We would be, till today, in a monetary war between the different currencies of Europe, having strong currencies like the German mark and the guilder, and weaker currencies of France and the southern part of Europe. It would have been a total disaster. As we fortunately had the euro, we had a discipline mechanism during all this crisis which helped the European Union, yes, I have to say, to survive, because it would have been terrible to be faced to a monetary war amongst members of the European Union without having the euro. So you are asking, could you imagine Europe without the euro? Yes, but it would be highly and very difficult.
Yeah, or a Europe with different countries and closed borders.
Yeah. But I mean, we are forgetting about the achievements of the Maastricht Treaty, because the internal market was really definitely established as a political goal during the Maastricht conference. We have forgotten, as we are living now, about the importance of borders. Young people don't remember what borders really mean, that you have to wait for 1 hour and 1 hour and a half between Belgium and Limburg in order to cross the border. So everything is fine, but not everything is perfect.
No. And you will be at the conference in Maastricht in December.
Yeah.
What kind of message you will bring there?
Yeah, that those who have signed the Treaty of Maastricht were right, and that they are still and rightly so proud of their signature. I have close contacts with all the others, foreign ministers and finance ministers who signed that treaty. They are out of politics. I'm where I am, and the message is that we should be inspired by the basic philosophy of the Maastricht Treaty. We did change the name of the European Community, as our union was called until the Maastricht Treaty, and we was jumping from the European Community to the European Union. That's a massive change. I'm a little bit disappointed when visiting the results of that jump, but nevertheless, we tried, and in parts of what we are doing, we were successful.
And what medicine you will use to make Europe better again?
Yeah, I think that the principle of subsidiarity is of vital and paramount importance. I do think that in the past, the European Union was dealing with too much details, that we were inserting ourselves in the daily life of our citizens, and they don't like it. That's the reason why I said when starting the mandate of this Commission that we have to be big on big things and small on smaller things. The European Union, and thus the Commission, is not there to regulate every detail of the daily life of citizens. That's for the national states, that's for the regions, for the provinces, for the municipalities, and that's what we are doing now. That's what we are trying to do now. And that would be my message. Let's focus on the main issues. Let's focus on the global problems we are facing as a European Union, together with our international partners located elsewhere. And let's not try to regulate everything in the daily life of citizens. People don't like that. And let's check if the wording we are using is still appropriate. I will never again but I stopped to do it even before Maastricht, talk about the United States of Europe, because our citizens don't like that. They want to be Dutch, they want to be Luxembourgers, they want to be Limburgers, they want to be Walloons or Flemish, Bavarian, Austrian and Tyrolean. Let's not take away from the citizens their immediate neighborhood. They like their landscape, they like their regional and national tradition. They are in love with the culture they were educated in and by. So let's be modest and let's focus on the main issues.
And Frans Timmermans is one of his tasks to get less rules. How far he is with that?
But he's making progress, as is the Commission. He's dealing with his job in a marvelous way, facing strong opposition, sometimes in the European Parliament, because the European Parliament wants us to legislate more, but he's trying to put into practice this basic rule I gave to this Commission, to be big on big and reluctant on smaller things. He's doing a good job.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that I remember the Euro top in Maastricht. People were, let's say, a little bit proud that all the famous political leaders came to Maastricht. Europe comes to you. Now, that is not anymore the case. It's always in Brussels for practical reasons and financial reasons, I understand. But in a way, maybe that's part of the idea now, that everything is behind closed doors in Brussels. Europe doesn't come to you in that way.
No. You know, this is due to the Dutch.
Okay.
Because during the negotiations of the MECC Treaty, which was one of the weakest treaties we did experience in European post-war history, the Dutch wanted to have one vote more when it comes to decision of the Council of Ministers than Belgium. And the consolation prize for Belgium was that all the tops, all the summits should take place in Brussels. So in fact, the then Dutch government is responsible for the fact that we are no longer going to the countries of the presidency. I do think that we should do that again. We are doing it from time to time, but it's very costly. You know, I'm living in Brussels. I was Luxembourg's Prime Minister. It's easy to go to Brussels from Den Haag too. But if you are a Maltese or Prime Minister or a Cypriot President, if you have to travel to Lisboa or to Madrid, that's costly. It's taxpayers' money. It's easier to use the infrastructure we have in Brussels than to invent a new infrastructure every 6 months. So I think when it comes to the budgetary implications of moving around, it's less cost in Brussels than elsewhere. But we will have a top, as you are saying in Dutch, another summit in January on Malta. It's costly. It's costly. But I do think that from time to time we have to visit the countries of the presidency. That's important, because mainly for smaller member states, the fact that they are leading the work and the proceedings of the European Union during their presidency is an important event in the political life of these countries. For France, for Germany, for Britain, even for Spain, this is less important. But Maastricht is the example that if you are having a top in your country, this will stay as a signal and as a symbol for eternity. Maastricht is there forever.